Mr. Speaker. I rise today to express my support for the Taylor Act as the Vice Chairman of the Financial Institutions Committee and a co-sponsor of this bipartisan bill. I also want to thank my colleague, Representative Tipton, for his work on this measure. And I emphasize bipartisan. I listened to the other side of the aisle, and it would sound like there would be no support for this legislation, but there is support from this legislation. And I would wonder if the ranking member has been having some of the conversations with some of her members, because over the past few years, we've learned that one size fits all. Those rules are a recipe for a more concentrated and less dynamic financial system. I spend a lot of time talking with community bankers, credit unions, and their customers. They complain about skyrocketing compliance costs and regulatory burdens that force them to take attention away from their core businesses when they continue to add staff, not to serve customers, but to work on compliance issues. Consumers complain about higher prices, fewer choices, and less access to important financial products. Small and mid-sized institutions play an important role in financing the dreams and its aspirations of Main Street businesses and middle-class families. Unfortunately, these institutions are disproportionately affected by the one-size-fits-all rules coming out of Washington, D.C. Banks and credit unions are merging or closing altogether, and new banks are not forming to take their place. Storied institutions with multi-generational relationships in their communities are being forced to close their doors and abandon the cities and towns they once served. And it's very sad, Mr. Speaker, to see a small town with a shuttered bank. We see it across Western Pennsylvania, and we are seeing it across the country. This has an unmistakable impact on our economy. And I remind the other side about the studies where because of the overregulation over the last 10 years, that 650,000 fewer small businesses have been created, 6.5 million fewer jobs, that's 6.5 million fewer people paying Social Security tax, 6.5 million people fewer paying Medicare tax. Critical jobs that have not been created.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Additional 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, small businesses can't get the loans that they need. Families can't get the mortgage or pay for college. All of this means that the American dream is getting harder and harder for people across the country. Again, as I often remind my colleagues, the solution isn't deregulation. It's right regulation. The Taylor Act achieves this. By enacting the Taylor Act, we can focus regulatory energy and resources where they are most needed and help reinvigorate our community financial institutions. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation.